Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Nick, Damien Green kind of downplayed the 40 Eurosceptics who've written to the Prime Minister asking for more and wanting a meeting. Is he right, or is it a serious division for the Tories?
Well, it was a very diplomatic response from Damien Green. I think what Downing Street would say in their heart of hearts about that letter from John Barron is, well, what's the point of meeting John Barron and his 40 merry friends? Because they want to get Britain out. They've always wanted to get Britain out. And the demands that they're tabling in that letter, which is to have absolute primacy of the UK Parliament over EU law, is not in the negotiation and is not going to happen. But I do think there's an important point there, which is that David Cameron was quite dismissive of John Barron in the House of Commons the other day. Yeah. And he perhaps needs to maybe just occasionally show a little bit of charm and a little bit of sort of listening to those sorts of people. Yes, they're on the other side to the Prime Minister, but he's got to manage this process carefully. The party's going to divide, but he does need to avoid a civil war, and he can avoid that civil war if perhaps all sides are respected in this debate.
Presumably the 40 who signed are quite hardcore Eurosceptic, but there are more Eurosceptics than that. Even if Mr Cameron gets nearly all of what he's asking for, how many Conservative MPs will still want to come out?
Well, I think, going back to the Barron point, the 40 that have signed that letter are the unbiddable group, and I think what Downing Street and the Treasury have done is they've put them to one side. And as you said, the battle really now for the party is what you do with those, maybe up to a third of the party that would be minded to leave, maybe about 100 MPs to 150 even. And I think it was very interesting, a story in the Sunday Times today, Osborne talking about emergency breaks on actual legislation, if things are coming through from Brussels that the British don't want. So what they're trying to do is they still think the negotiation really is in play, and what we have to do is try and pick off moderate Eurosceptics, give them a package that they can come behind us on, and we need to just accept that there will be 40 hardcore outers that we can never placate.
In the Cameron nightmare is the potential backdrop to this referendum. We've had the French Prime Minister saying that Europe's in grave danger. We've had President Tusk of the Council saying we've only got a couple of months to sort out this immigration issue. We've had the Dutch Prime Minister giving warnings as well. If there's a sense that Europe is falling apart, particularly on the migration crisis, Schengen swept away as it may be tomorrow, that's not a way to win a referendum.
No, it's a huge advantage for the Brexit campaign, and it distinguishes them from their predecessors of about 20 years ago. Leaving the European Union back then was seen as almost a pessimistic thing to do. And now you can almost support Brexit because you think, why chain yourself to a continent that's losing when there's so much dynamism elsewhere in the world? So the character, the optimism of the Brexit campaign, I think is a challenge that Cameron has to surmount. He can't paint them as being entirely insular anymore. I used to think that the internal Tory problem would be absolutely explosive. It would be either, if not a mid-19th century Corn Laws style split, then a mid-1990s rolling crisis within the Tory party over Europe. And I no longer think that's true. I think the fact that they know they can expect to be in government until at least 2025, if they just maintain some basic cohesion because of the weakness of the Labour Party, is a huge point of contrast from the 1990s. And I think there'll be some arguments. Cameron will look like he's losing control during periods of 2016, but ultimately there won't be anything existential going wrong for the party.
Now, we know, or we believe, the government is anxious to get it out of the way by the end of June, maybe first week in July at the latest. But Nicola Sturgeon on Andrew Marr this morning had some interesting things to say about the timetable for the referendum. Let's just hear what she said.
We had a negative, fear-laden campaign from the No campaign, and they almost lost. In the referendum for Europe, the EU referendum, the two campaigns are much closer to start with, and if the In campaign falls into the trap of the No campaign, I fear it will lose.
Now, Nicola Sturgeon had said that she doesn't want a June referendum. She thinks it's too soon. And you can say, well, that's just the view of the First Minister. She doesn't have a vote in Parliament. But it may have more significance than that. I was briefed last week by a senior Scottish nationalist who said this: many Conservatives will not want a June referendum. The Eurosceptics, they want longer time to lay out their case. They would much rather have it in the autumn. And the Scottish nationalists, I was told, will not vote to help the government get a June referendum there. So there could be a parliamentary tussle to meet the Prime Minister's
there could be
timetable.
Yeah, the SNP could try and turn it into a vote in the House. Then it depends on what Labour do. Do Labour want to have it in June or later? I actually think that the Eurosceptics are so focused on trying to get this referendum through. I don't think that as long as they feel that they have the campaigning time run up that they want, which was the 4-month period, I think that they will go for it.
You see, I'm not sure that's true. I think given the divisions in the Eurosceptic side at the moment in the Out campaign and the various organisations, I think they feel they need longer to get their ducks in a row. They also think the best time for them to fight it is after there's been another major migration crisis in the summer. They know that when that happens, people look more kindly on their side of the argument.
That may be true, but it's quite difficult for Eurosceptic Tories who've spent the last 2 decades saying we must have a referendum, and every time one doesn't happen, they say this is outrageous against democracy, for them to argue for a delay. But I do think that Nicola Sturgeon's intervention is very significant. And I think that the pressure on the Prime Minister to listen to what she's saying will not so much come in Parliament, it could come from the Electoral Commission. The Electoral Commission has already said we cannot have this referendum in May at the same time as the devolved elections. And if, let's say, you were to have Nicola Sturgeon, Arlene Foster, the new First Minister of Northern Ireland, and Carwyn Jones, the First Minister of Wales, if they all said, we think this is overcomplicating, because don't forget, the EU referendum campaign has officially to be 10 weeks, therefore it is going to take place at the same time as the devolved elections. If they all says that's too confusing, and the Electoral Commission were to make another intervention, that would be significant. Well, and then you could be bouncing into September.
Privately, the Electoral Commission has been saying that they don't want an overlap, that there should be a clear gap between the referendum campaign and the local elections, the Assembly, the parliamentary elections in Scotland.
Yeah, they're quite a low view of the electorate and the electorate's ability to discriminate from election to election. But I think the Commission is an obstacle. I think Nicola Sturgeon is an obstacle. But the principal obstacle is just the possibility that Cameron's negotiation is delayed by a few weeks, which is eminently foreseeable, I think. And
you don't think that it's going to be a done deal in the February summit?
They're putting a lot of weight on one summit, and all it takes is an external shock, another big migrant wave, a terror attack, whatever it is, and suddenly British renegotiation is no longer the #1 item on the EU's mind, and actually it's the next summit that matters. And it takes one delay for us to move beyond June and then into September. I used to think that 2017 would be more likely. I've slightly revised that view, but I don't think June 2016 is doable.
Well, we've got Leave, we've got Leave.eu, I think we've got Go as another one, but there's another Out campaign, and it's called, it's Grassroots Out. And it was there with us, Liam Fox, Conservative, Nigel Farage there, Kate Hoey, I think, from Labour was there. It was launched yesterday. Nick, I mean, at some stage they have to consult. If they want to be serious and marshal all their resources, they have to have a single Out campaign, do they not?
And by law they have to.
That's what we had in 1975.
By law they have to. The Electoral Commission is going to have to designate a campaign on either side. And it's pretty clear that the inside they're coalescing around this Britain Stronger in Europe group. But as you say, on the outside, there isn't that agreement, and there's feuding between these two groups, and they are going to have to reach agreement. The problem they have is who is going to lead them. Nigel Lawson, who's a key figure in Vote Leave, says we will get a senior cabinet minister. Well, I reported last week that the most senior cabinet minister who is going to go for Brexit, Ian Duncan-Smith, he's going to do his own thing, which leaves you with Chris Grayling. I mean, he'll campaign for Out, but on his own terms, which leaves you with Chris Grayling and Theresa Villiers. Now, they're going to go up against the leader of the In campaign, who's going to be somebody called David Cameron. And so they really do need to get unity. Vote Leave say they're a more grown-up group. Leave.eu say that they're a more grassroots group, but they have got to find some sort of agreement.
Actually, interestingly about who will lead it, in terms of Chris Grayling, someone said to me the other day that actually Graylin's view is that lots of senior figures in the party should be voices, i.e. he was sort of suggesting he didn't want to lead it and that there wasn't going to be one senior cabinet minister that was going to champion it, which gives them another problem about who to get.
I think the organisational, factional differences matter a lot less than who you have as your face and voice. And it doesn't have to be a cabinet member. It could be a very, very prominent business person, the head of a major company.
Who knew how to debate.
Absolutely. And yeah,
Which is not true of many businessmen.
And who
in public.
And who in
Business
particular
leaders-
deals with the question of economic risk, which is the way you grind down an exit campaign.
I mean, the Stay In campaign was launched by the chief executive of the
Stuart
Bombshell,
Rose.
Stuart Rose, from about.
And it was a
we've not heard
disaster.
From
It was a
since.
it was a disastrous launch.
Any of you going to John McDonnell's first economic seminar?
washing my hair.
You watch it very well. Well, it's on Tuesday. He's doing a whole series of economic seminars around the country. He wants to get out the Westminster bubble. For the first one, he's only managed to get to the West End in London, but he's got a very prominent economist there. I like a good economic seminar. I want you to come with me.
But I tell you what, Andrew, it's interesting. There's lots of people in the Labour Party that are obviously really worried about Jeremy Corbyn's leadership. But the one thing those critics are saying they're quite encouraged about are these seminars, is this economics panel he's got. So he's got some incredibly serious people, and he's opening up these seminars.
And his
they're
article in the
encouraged.
Sunday Times today on Google,
Yeah.
on whether this is a good deal, was a very reasoned and thoughtful article on whether this is really such a good deal for the British taxpayer.
Yeah.
I can feel I'm going to be on my own. Anyway, they're sold out. There's probably no room for you.
I've been